Good evening, students. So today we are going to start with our new lecture, the new prerequisite for your end, that is nothing but your OSI layers, right, and network modeling. But before starting with the that particular concept, we will see what we are done in our last lecture as a recap. So in last lecture we have seen the evolution of network, right, how the network is evolving day by day, right, from the fixed computing to mobility to your IoT, and IoT to now the era is comes, that is nothing but your internet of everything, right. And after that we also see how the networking can be affect in our day to day's life, right. Now right now the what is the situation of the network in our everyone's life, right. In pandemic also how the network is important now that everyone is experiencing, right. Then we completed the topic as networking trends, right. So how networking trends can be done. For example, we have seen how the smart city, right, how the smart classrooms and all that things, smart home, all that things are evolving with the help of the network. So that is nothing we are done under the networking trends, right. Then we are seeing the networking devices are used as components, right. So there are intermediary devices. What do you mean by that? The end devices are there, then the what is the medias, right, wireless and wired coaxial cable and all that things we already seen in last lecture. So after that we seen the types of the network, right, LAN, MAN, WAN, and as well as the PAN. Okay, and differentiation between all these types of the networks we already seen. Then network representation using the topology diagram. So there are two topologies, the logical topology and the physical topology, right. With respect to in our college existing network, I have given you the example also, so differentiate in between the physical topology and the logical topology one. And last point in last lecture we have discussed, that is nothing but the reliable network. So when you will call it as a network is in the reliable network, so there are four parameters, right. The first one is your the fault tolerance, the second one is your the I think is the scalability, yes, and the third one is the QoS parameter, and the fourth one is your the network security, right. And network security also we have discussed the two things. The first one is your the security with respect to your the network infrastructure, and the second one we have discussed the net security with respect to your the information of that particular network architecture, right. So all these things we have discussed in our last lecture, right. So in today what we will see the first one is the overall networking model and its functions, right. Then we will see what is the our OSI model and the TCP IP model, what is the difference between both, right. And how many layers are there in OSI model and how many layers are there in TCP IP models. Then we will see the what are the different functionalities in between or similarities in between the OSI and TCP IP model, right. Then I'm dividing this particular OSI and TCP IP model in between the two sections. The first section is nothing but the upper layers, and the second one is the obviously lower layers. So I will be explaining you the various functionalities of these upper layers. Now what are the upper layers are there and how the functionality is there, what are the different protocols it will cover, or it will be under what are the different protocols are there, right. And after that one very much important point I am prioritize that how the transport layer is what are the functionalities of the transport layers and what are the different protocols under that, under this transport layer, that also we will see. Because all these protocols and these functionalities of transport layer, it will be very much important when you designing any kind of the network. And while designing the network you need to consider all these parameters and all these protocols, right. So with respect to our networking designing lab also it will be very useful for us, uh, and the last point I'm discussing today is IP addressing services, that is DNS and DSCP, that is domain name service and the dynamic host configuration protocol. So how IP addressing can be assigning to existing or networking while existing designing the network, right? And how it can be used, right? How the working of this particular services also we will see, right? As you know, in operating system also we have studied. So there is an one daemon is running for each and every process, that we can call it as a system daemon, right? So for the DNS there is an one daemon, and for DSCP also there is one daemon. So what are these daemons also there, that we need to find out, right? So we will see one by one. So starting with the first point, that is how the network model is there, and overview of the functionality of this particular network model, right? So if we considered in OSI layers, so there are so total the 7 layers are there, you might know, and you already studied in the computer network subject, right? So all these are nothing but the some standard are given. Standard is nothing but what it will be, that you need to follow, right? These are the some of the set of rules are there for the communication of the processes, and that you need to follow. And all these layers are nothing but communicating with each other over the network, and which we called it as an model, right? So if you see here the bottom up approach, right? So the layer first is nothing but your the physical layer, the layer second is data link layer, the third one is network, fourth one is transport layer, fifth one is the session, sixth one is the presentation, and seventh layer is nothing but your application. And through application user is able to see their application which will be required to by them, right? So how the transmission of the data can be take place from, obviously from upper layer to lower layer, right? And how the receiving of the data can be taken place after, obviously after a reverse direction, right? So we will see one by one. So if you consider this particular diagram, right? Right, so here in we will see there are a different 7 layers are there, right? So here so in for each layer here the functionalities is there, is given, right? For example, this network process to application is functionality of this particular application layer, and what are the protocols under this particular application layer, so it is also given here, right? So DNS, HTTP, P2P, email, SMTP, telnet and FTP are nothing but the protocols of this particular application layer. So likewise I have given in this particular diagram, so total there are 7 layers, so we will see one by one, right? So in physical layer we are starting from the layer first, the physical layer. So what is the functionality of this physical layer is, which will be responsible for your media, signal and binary transmission of your data, right? And what are the protocols under which it will be used, or what are the different cables it will be used for transmission of this particular media or data, right? So RS-232 cable we already know, right? 802.11 protocol also we know, right? So all these things, RJ45, the LAN cable connector, you know. So all these things it will be used for by the physical layer, under the physical layer, right? So up to layer first there is layer 2, that is the data link layer, which will be again responsible for your the physical addressing of your devices, right? For example, if you consider when you type in terminal as well, if config, right? So it will be gives you and the IP address as well as your MAC addresses, right? So all the MAC address is nothing but the physical address of your component, right? So Ethernet address we can call it as. So it will be gives under your data link layer, right? So physical addressing is the function of your data link layer, and what are the different protocols is there. So Ethernet is there, 802.11 protocol is there, right? ATM, fiber channel, all these, some, for example, these are nothing but the some cables, right? Some topologies also there, right? So after the data link layer, that is the third one, that very much important layer, is called as the network layer, right? So what is the functionality basically the network layer do? It is nothing but the determination of path and logical addressing of the data. We already know, right, the physical addressing and physical topology and logical topology, right? So physical topology can be considered in your the physical and the data link layer, right? And for the logical addressing you can consider the network layer, right? So here there are various types of the protocols are there. For example, it's given IP ARP address resolution protocol, right? IP security, ICMP, IGMP, OSPA, open source shortest path, open shortest path first, right? So all these are nothing but the protocols which will be considered under this network layer. So all these are the routing, we can call it as the routing protocols. Okay, so all these things we need to use in our networking lab as well, right? Then after the third layer, the fourth layer, that is the transport layer comes, right? Under that there is an end-to-end connection. Its functionality is what, its responsibility is what, to manage end-to-end connections, and its packets reliability also it needs to be managed, right? So there are various protocols under this particular layers as well. For example, if you consider this TCP UDP, what you already studied, right, as in terms of socket programming as well, right? So connection oriented and connection less protocols are there, right? Some security protocols also there, SSL and TLS, right? So all these related to your the transport layer protocol, right? And after that we have an session layer as a fifth layer of the OSI model, which will be responsible for the inter-host communication in between the two host connection. It will be responsible. It will be also responsible for the session management and session establishment and session management in between two hosts, right? In this also the remote procedure calls, RPCs, name, pipe, and TCP also will be the responsible under this particular session layer. Then we move further for the presentation layer, and functionality of the presentation layer is whatever comes from the session, right? So that you need to be that particular data is need to be in the you need to represent, right? So in the format of what, in the format of there are different types: HTML, docs, JPG, MP3, AVI, or whatever it may be, a socket data, right? So all these things you need to representation of your data can be done, right? It can be encrypted, right, in the presentation layer, and it can be sent to again to your application layer. And while in application layer it will be used by different protocols, where what are the protocols are there? The SMTP is there, telnet is there, file transfer protocol is there, HTTP is there, www or HTTP web server we can call it as, then domain name server, right? DNS is there, which will be converting IP into name format, right? And it will be easy to understand, easy to remember, and easy to use for by the user, right? So all these are nothing but the networking model, we can call it as OSI model, and it is nothing but the set of rules to use by this particular networking model, right? Then we move towards a TCP/IP model, right? So there are four again layers, we can call it as the network interface, right? Which the first layer, which will be responsible again for the transmission of data, right? Which will be responsible for your transmission of data, or a transmission between the two devices of the same network, right? Then next one is the internet, right? It will be providing you the internet working, right? It will be move your packet from your source to the destination, right? And then third one, that is nothing but the transport layer. It will be provide you the process to process message delivery and error delivery, responsible for the error delivery as well as the message delivery, Okay, so whenever you are sending the any packet from the source to destination, whether the destination have reached that particular packet, and or whether it will be and some errors are there, right? So all these things will be handled by this transport layer. And lastly, it will be nothing but your the application layer. In this, it will be uh, allow access to this networking resources, and it will be used, it can be used your application by the user or by the end user, right? So these are nothing but the total 4 layers in the TCP/IP model, and the total we are already seen. So total there are 7 layers in the OSI model, right? So now we will see what is the similarity in between this both OSI and as well as in TCP model, right? Right. So if you consider the first of all, we will see what is the OSI reference model, right? So we already seen from the layer 1, from this particular layer 1, right? So from layer 1, right, the physical layer, then the data link layer, the second one, network layer, the third one, transport fourth, session fifth, presentation sixth, and application layer is the seventh one, right? And the how you can measure its what we can as a data or the packets in the form of what, right? So first, for physical layer, it will be in terms of the bits, right? In data link, in terms of the frames, right? The frames data can be transferred in terms of the frames, right? In network, it can be transferred with the help of the packets, right? In transport, it can be in terms of the segments, and from the session to application, it is in terms of your the data, right? So and what are the different protocols under each layer, as we already discussed, right? In application layer, HTTP, DNS, right? All these are there. Then in presentation, it will be responsible for your encryption and compression of your protocols. Then session, it can be your RPC, tunneling, piping is already there, right? For transport layer, we have then TCP and UDP, connection oriented and connection less protocols, right? For networking, we have an ICMP, IGMP, ARP, IPv4, IPv6, OSPF, EIGRP, right? All these are nothing but the network layer routing protocols are there, right? For data link layer, we have an Ethernet port, right? Now all these ports are there. Then for physical, we are using the types of the media, right? Transmission media, we can call it as, it is nothing but your RS-232, Cat6, Cat5 cable, optic fiber cable nowadays we are using, right? So all these are nothing but the protocol we can consider in each of the layer. So here if you consider with respect to our TCP/IP model, right? So in TCP/IP, these first 2 layers, that is physical and the data link layer, combined to call it as a network interface here, right? So and it is transmitted of your data with the help of your bits and the frames, right? So for physical, we already seen it is the bits. For data link, it's frames, and combining all both the 2 layers, the layer first and the layer second, we have a network interface in our TCP model, and it will be using the bits and the frames for transmission, right? And again, the third layer, as it is as a network, we can call it as just an internet. It will be using again the same, that is in terms of your packets, transmission the data. Then the transport layer, again the same, it will be used as a segment, right? Here in TCP/IP model also, it will be used as in a segment, right? In now in session presentation application, we are combining all this, the upper, we can call it as an upper layers, right? And together we will call it as an only application layer in terms of your TCP/IP model, right? And it is nothing but the sending a data into format, so your data, right? So there is no any session and presentation layer in your the TCP/IP model, right? Because we are combining here the session, presentation and application together to call it as an your application layer. right? So this similarity you need to be understood, right? So before there are seven OSI layers model, right? But in the TCP/IP model we have only the four, right? Because we have combining here the physical and data link layer as your network interface, right? And then session, presentation and application as combining, we can call it as an only a application layer, right? So so total there are only four layers in our TCP/IP model. There are no any session layer, there are no any presentation layer in this particular TCP/IP model, right? I hope you understand this particular concept, right? I will schedule this quiz time at the last, quiz as the last, right? Then we will see one by one in application layer. If you consider this, okay, in seven layers, the seventh one is your application layer in OSI model, right? While in TCP/IP also the upper layer, the first layer is nothing but the application layer. In this the protocols is also the same, right? But what application layer provides, it is giving you the interface in between the application used for communication and underlying the network, right? Over the which the message can be transmitted. And what are the different protocols it will be used? It will be using your the DNS, HTTP, right, SMTP, right? Then the post office protocol, POP we can call it as. Then DSCP, right, FTP protocol it will be used. Then internet message access protocol it will be used, that is we can call it as IMAP, right? So all these are nothing but the protocol under the application layer, which will be same in your TCP/IP first application layer protocol as well as in your OSI model level 7 application layer protocol, right? Then we will move toward the presentation layer, right? In presentation, if you see, this is nothing but your the sixth layer of OSI model, but it will be combined in your TCP/IP model in the application layer itself, right? So TCP/IP model in application layer itself, the presentation protocols are we can combinedly used, right? Right? And what are they? The MKV, MPG, GIF, JPG, PNG, MP3, right? All these are representations of these particular data we can using in this application layer in our TCP/IP protocol, right? And what is the functionality of the presentation layer? It will be used formatting or presenting data at the source devices into a compatible format, right? So all these are nothing but the formats of the particular data sets and datas, right? And it can be also useful for the compression and decompression by the destination devices, right? Encryption and decryption also it can be used in this particular presentation layers, right? Then again we will move towards your session layer, right? What is the functionality of the session layer, right? It creates and maintains the dialogues between the source and the destination of the application, right? If you see in bank application, right, for example, if you remains unattended in bank application internet banking, right, then your session got expired, right? So who is responsible for it? The session layer, the session, because it can be manages the time limit it already given. If the session is so and so time, it will be unattended, or you are not you are just seeing that particular application, right? You are not doing anything, right? So it will be session can be a logout after 10 to after 5 to 10 minutes, right? So it can be an example of your session layer. It handles the exchange of information to initiate the dialogues, keep them active, and restart the sessions that are disrupted or ideal for a long period of time, right? That I am told you right now, right? So after that the next layer is our the transport layer, right? In this transport layer, what are the responsibility is, for example, it will be tracking the individual conversations, right? It will be tracking your individual conversations, right? Then segmentation of data, then reassembling the segments, right? Add the header information, then identify, separate, manage multiple conversation, right? So all the conversation related thing who are responsible as a transport layer, who are transport layer is responsible, right? If you see in this particular diagram also, right, for streaming the video, online video chatting, multiple web pages, if you are asking for, right, you are using an email protocol, sending and receiving, right? So all these are nothing but the transport layer functionalities, right? The segmentation can be done, right, and it will be used with the help of your the uh, uh, with the help of your the in the networks, right? Next one is what are the different protocols of transport layer, as we already seen. For example, if you consider this network access, that means the first two layers, right, data link layer and the physical layer, the LAN connection and the WAN connection. Then the internet, that is the network layer, we are showing here only one, that is IP, internet protocol. Then it will be transport to your transport protocol, that is connection oriented TCP protocol, and connection less, that is UDP protocol, right? And it will be going again to your application layer, right? So in application layer we already studied the HTTP, SMTP, DNS, FTP, TFTP. All these are nothing but your application layer oriented protocols, right? So transport layer only two, that is TCP protocol and your UDP protocol, right? So what is if you consider what happened in TCP and what happened in the UDP, if you compare, or if you finding out what happened exactly in between both. So if you consider this particular TCP, right, so there are a three-way handshaking protocol you already studied, right? So whenever you send a message to a message to anyone, right, it will gives you a back you acknowledgement as well, right? So whether that particular message is received or not, right? And same way vice versa is also possible in your TCP, but in the UDP it can't be happen because it is in the connection less protocol. You need to just send a message, right, and you are just waiting for the replying for the receiver side, right? It can't be happen. Okay, so just you are sending and waiting for responding, right? It can it would be your UDP communication protocol, right? Then we will move towards your IP addressing services, right? So you already know this particular example which I am showing you in front of your slide, right? So this is nothing but your the domain name system, right? Because here the one IP address is there, which will be again we are converting this into the particular with respect to a simple identifiable rememberable domain name, right? We can call it as a domain name services, right? So it will be create to convert the numeric IP addresses into a simple recognizable name, right? For example, here I am giving one example, as for example this particular IP addresses I am using, right? So from client to in particular this particular network, right, it will be very difficult to understood or difficult to remember this particular IP addresses of this particular devices, but to access this particular thing, because it is in numeric form, right? And we can't remember 10 to after 10 to 15 IP addresses. It is impossible to remember all these networking addresses, right? Because so there is a concept comes, then the domain name services, where this particular numeric addresses we are just converting into your the recognizable name. And when you are typing in the URL, you can directly type there the www.cisco.com and all that things, so you are able to check that particular website, right? Instead of you are putting there the IP address of that particular website, that is 192.1, which is shown in this particular diagram, right? So now the next concept, the last one, is the dynamic host configuration protocol, that is called as DSCP, right? So there are two ways by which you can assign the IP addresses to your end devices, right? The first one is your the static IP address, that is nothing but you need to provide in it by the manually, right? And the second one, which we called it as by using the DHCP server, right, that is dynamic host configuration protocol. In this you need to provide then IP addresses which you need to provide, which you need to give to your end devices, right? So here, if you see, the dynamic host configuration protocol for IPv4 services, which automates the assignment of IPv4 addresses, subnet masks, gateways, and other networking parameters, right? When a host connects to the network, the DHCP server is contacted and an address is requested, right? The DHCP server chooses an address from a configured range of addresses called as a pool and assigns it to the host, right? Now listen here, for example, this DHCP server, in our college campus also we are hosting one DHCP server, right? From that, in each and every labs we are giving some range, right? We can call it as a DHCP pool range, right? In that, for example in 301, right, we have an IP address range 192.168.64.1, right? On, and total number of PCs are there in lab number 301 are 30, right? So 1 to 30 I am assigning to that particular pool of 301, right? So whenever any machines can request for an IP to that our DHCP server, it will be provide them IP address by using that particular pool only. So randomly it will be assigned to that particular system, right? From that particular series of IPs, the series of IPs of that particular DHCP pool, right? So likewise in 301, 302, 302, for every lab we have a different series of pool of the IP addresses, and from that, with respect to of the lab, and that particular IP will be assigned. And we, what is the advantage of this? Then we are able to easily understood in which lab and from which system or which IP the problem is occurs, right? Due to which the network can be failed. So while any placement or while any lab session, right, we are experiencing if some problem, then we are able to easily identify from that series of the IP address of that DHCP pool, and it will be easy to rectify and easy to troubleshoot then, right? So this is one of the advantage of it. If I am manually assigning an IP address, then there will be no tracking, right? So there will be no any situation or condition in this. We can rectify or we can troubleshoot that problem in within minutes, right? So the DHCP we are always using for easy or for automates, it will be used for automates the IP address assignment, right? So from this DHCP server, which we are connected to this particular ISP, right, and from this particular ISP our organization network is connected, and these are nothing but the end devices which we are requesting this particular switch. This switch is going to this particular router, and these are nothing but the local DHCP server, right? So whatever the pool you are creating on this particular local DHCP server, from that these particular end devices are getting the IP addresses, right? So, okay. So this router DHCP server is different, this ISP DHCP server is different, this home DHCP server is different, right? So all these are nothing but different types of the DHCP servers, right? So this particular ISP DHCP server is giving automatically address to all these routers of that particular that particular server range, right, which we are connected to this particular DHCP servers, right? This particular router DHCP server is nothing but it will be gives the pool of the DHCP pools to this particular routers, right? And from this router is connected to this particular local DHCP server, which is getting which is giving IP address to this particular DHCP clients, right? So all this is all about your dynamic host configuration protocol, right? So what we are what we are seen today, the first one is the networking model overview, right? So there are a set of rules, the set of standards are there by which the model can be designed, and it is nothing but the 7-layer OSI models and the 4 layers the TCP/IP model we have seen. And what are the different similarity in between both the models we have seen, what are the different protocols under each and every layer that we have seen. We are giving the most priorities to the transport layer from transport layers and its protocols. And then what is the TCP and UDP protocol in its functionalities we are seeing. Then how the IP address can be given or can be allocated, can be assigned with the help of DNS and the DSCP, that is also we are seen, right? So this is all about the today, and we will stop today, and in the next lecture we will see the remaining network, the remaining OSI layers, that is the network layer, data link layer, and the physical layer and its functionality, right? And then if time permits, then we will also have the what are the different networking devices and its functionality, right? So this is all about today. Now I will post one quiz, right? So you need to go through that particular link, and you need to give that particular quiz. It is for only a 3 minutes. 4 questions are there. It is mandatory for all. Okay, so just click on that particular link and give the test. Okay, so we will stop here. Okay, so thank you very much for joining. Okay, okay, good day.